Hello. In this video, we're going to show how to implement an Alpha Anywhere plus TransForm integrated approach to be able to expose a Microsoft Access database online so that it can be used as a TransForm data source. So if we see the options that are available for TransForm and Alpha Anywhere integration, there are really two categories. One is to enhance a TransForm solution with some back office type of components, such as dashboards and reports. But the other functionality is using Alpha Anywhere to implement REST APIs, so web services via a REST API, for company databases, systems of record. So the assumption is that there's an existing database, and this could be a service-based one like SQL or a file-based one like Microsoft Access, and it is a database without a REST API. So SQL databases sometimes do offer a REST API, sometimes they don't. But things like Microsoft Access obviously do not have any online capability built in. They're meant to be used in a desktop file-based approach. So what we can do with Alpha Anywhere is to build such a REST API on top of something like Microsoft Access, so that then, since this is now a REST API, we can access it through the TransForm mobile application. So configure a list control, for example, a list field, to point to that REST API and retrieve data from that Access database to be used when capturing data inside the form. So the implementation that we're going to show today is an invoicing application. So I'm going to add a new invoice to my forms list, and I'm going to pick a customer number, customer description, so healthy foods, and I'm going to start entering line items. So the options I have when adding a line item are, I can either pick that I've configured in this form, I can pick from a Google Sheet, or I can pick that Microsoft Access REST API that I've built with Alpha Anywhere. So if I choose that option and I add a new line item, what the data that I want to see is essentially the data that exists in this example in just the Northwind database and Access in the products table. So the REST API that I've built exposes this table, the products table, to that REST API. So when I click on the category field, and I've built this as a cascade menu, so if I click on a category field, I am getting the fields that correspond to the values of the field that correspond to the category field here in Northwind. And when I pick one of these, then my next field is filtered to show only those corresponding to that category. So I pick, for example, this one. And then I pick up the product code, I fill in the description, and I also pick up the unit price from the table. And if I order a quantity, then I also get a total price. I can continue in the same way. If I pick a different category, then I get a different list of options. Again, everything coming from Northwind, and whatever I do here is calculated again, and then at the end I have a summary of my items. So everything shown here in this form was configured via a TransForm, the TransForm form builder, obviously. So none of this is necessarily static, or as it is. I just defined that this should be a static, a REST API call to a method that I implemented using Alpha Anywhere. So all I had to do was build an XBasic class that is called getProducts, and that executes this select query. So it gets the fields that I need from the products table. And then all we need to do is build a web service on top of that. So point to that class via web service. There is the method exposed, and we define a get verb for that method. And that is all that is needed. We publish to an alpha server. That alpha server obviously needs to have a connection and to have accessible that access database, so Northwind in this example. And after that point, that REST API is available and live. So if I access that API endpoint via just a normal browser, this is what I get back. So this is the data that's returning. So in TransForm, what I do is I parse that data so that when displayed, I can split them out into a category list and then a code list showing the description, and then I'm filling in the rest of the fields according to the selection made. So all in all, a very simple way to bring an Access database online to be able to be accessed by a TransForm form. Now, in this case, I just defined one method, which was the getProducts method. I could have equally defined more to point at other tables, and I could have defined methods to write data back to the Access database, not only to retrieve the data to show in my list selections, but also if I've made some choice or added some items to be able to enter data also back to that Access database. Thank you.